I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z founder Brandon Amoroso, former founder of Electric, and now the co-founder of Scaleless. And today I'm talking with Bobby McKinnon, who's the co-founder and CEO of Deliverlytics, which is a platform that helps eliminate delivery fraud. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. Not Gen Z myself, but fairly close to the end of the millennial spectrum, so not too far off.
So before we dive into things here, can you give everybody a quick background on yourself and how you got into Deliverlytics? It's a little bit of a tongue twister to begin with.
It is a bit of a tongue twister. Retrospectively, probably should have done something different there. But so I started my career after college as a military logistics officer in the Army for 5 years. Had a phenomenal experience. Really learned a lot about kind of how to think about problems, how to think about unique solutions to problems. That sort of shaped and formed the way that I approach everything, right? And gave me a lot of love and appreciation for the ability of small teams to accomplish a lot, right? Which is kind of what drove me into the startup landscape. After the military, I went to business school at the University of Virginia. While I was there, I interned at Nike on their post-purchase, Nike.com's post-purchase consumer experience and insights team. So developed like a real good understanding of CX priorities and kind of everything involving how customers interact with .com websites and the challenges there in fulfillment and challenges in creating really good, meaningful customer experiences. Went from that to a small blockchain AI startup. We tore apart the Bitcoin blockchain, de-anonymizing a lot of the transactions, then ended up working for the creditors in a couple of high-profile bankruptcies, kind of surrounding the collapse of FTX. Decided that I didn't want to really be a consultant for the U.S. trustee in the court system anymore, so left to start this company with a group of merchants down in Atlanta, Georgia, that were all struggling with delivery fraud issues, and I kind of understood a little bit of it from my time at Nike and a lot of the skills and things that we were using with AI and machine learning on the blockchain side were highly applicable to what we needed to do here.
And so, what exactly does Deliverlytics do when it comes to delivery fraud?
Yeah, so I think the best way to think about it is to start with where we did, which is we had a couple of businesses that were struggling with people claiming that they hadn't received packages, right? They would say, hey, I didn't get this thing, whatever it was, right? Baby stroller, case of energy drinks, you name it, from $20 all the way up through $1,200 orders. And obviously, everybody knows that porch piracy is a real thing, right? It does happen. Things do occur, right? There are things that get really dinged up and damaged in shipping. Sometimes you have box issues where the packaging is too thin and then the item breaks through when FedEx is delivering it, right? But the frequency with which some of these things were happening was definitely, it was indicative of more of a pattern of fraudulent behavior. And so, we decided okay, well, we can take in all of this data from the merchants. We can outsource, we can source in data from other merchants. We can write a bunch of predictive models, and we can say hey, this is likely fraud. This is some of the indicators, or these are places where you're likely to experience higher loss rates of packages. Maybe it's due to fraud. Maybe it's due to porch piracy. I don't really know, but all I do know is that it's happening at an outsized frequency, at these three houses versus the street over, right? So there's something going on there that you should generally try to avoid. The more and more we developed the product and worked with our customers and got their feedback on what was working for them, we found that most of them were using it proactively, right? So if you have a Shopify store, we have an app there that you would install. The risk scores are done automatically as orders come into your store. Takes a couple of seconds. And then we apply tags that you can then use to action work flows using like the Flow app, right? Cancel orders, add signature requirements, if there's like a high theft risk, so you can ensure the package actually gets there, all that stuff. But what we found was that most of our merchants were using it in their CX applications on the back end, right? So we would talk to our users and they would tell us, hey, like the insights up front are really good. Sometimes I use them to execute workflows, sometimes I don't, but what I do every time is whenever I receive a complaint from a customer or something goes wrong, the first thing I have my agents do is I have them check the Deliverlytics score, right? And he felt like, and several of our merchants echoed the same sentiment, that it was giving them a lot of comfort and providing them, from their perspective, like a sense that, this person probably did experience a legitimate issue with the order. There's nothing that has been like identified with that person or that address in the past where there's like a huge issue. So I'm just going to go ahead and like refund this thing, or I'm going to go ahead and send them another one because I think it's the right thing to do, right? And I think through that, like we learned that, it's not, I mean, there's obviously like a tangible benefit, right? Like if you reduce losses, you have less expenses, you're more profitable, right? But the bigger piece is you really want to provide the highest level of customer service and experience possible, right? Especially in e-com, because the switching cost for your consumers is zero, right? Meaning like if I come to you and you're selling like Air Force Ones or something, right? There are 50 other websites where I can buy Air Force Ones. So if I were to come to like Nike.com and I would have a really bad experience buying my Air Force Ones there, it's not even necessarily that I'm going to not buy Air Force Ones anymore. It's they'll just not buy them from you anymore, which was the whole point of setting up this like big D2C network for a lot of these, big brands anyway, right? And for the smaller brands that maybe your product isn't sold everywhere, it's just as easy for somebody, one of your competitors, to buy a Google ad for your product's name. So then when I go and I type in whatever, pair of boots or whatever it is that I'm trying to order, I'm going to get 15 different alternatives that are probably like 80 to 99% of the same thing that I was looking for with your product. And if I've had a bad experience with you, I'm just far, far more likely, like 4 to 5 times more likely to go with an alternative than I am to come back to you, right? That's what a lot of the consumer research shows. So I think these things have to sit in very good balance. And so, we've set out to create, products and services that support having that really, really strong balance and allowing you to deliver the highest quality customer experience without like getting taken for a ride.
So what happens when it is a high like risk score and the order, the order doesn't go through? Does that potentially, like, are there any like false positives? Like, what if that it really is a customer and they want to get that order and it is a legitimate order? How does situations like that get addressed?
Yeah, so there's obviously there's a lot of drivers of risk, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily that a high isn't a high, right? There's different reasons why we would say that something has a high risk associated, right? So if we said it has a high risk associated and the model indicator is that it's because of some sort of area risk, that would be an indicator of theft. I would never tell you or recommend or set up a workflow for you to cancel that order, right? We're probably going to look at adding signature requirements. If you have the capability to do a pickup point, like if you're working with a carrier like UPS or FedEx that have nationwide pickup points, then we would look to exercise one of those options as opposed to a cancellation. Cancellations are really reserved for a very, very tiny percentage. I mean, like less than 0.1% of orders that come through. So just generally speaking, there's not a lot of them. We also weight our models so that we will miss, basically, like it is incredibly rare to have a false positive. It's much more likely that you'll have a false negative with us, which is like obviously like it degrades the effectiveness, right, of the tool. But I think, again, like maybe it's because of my background around CX, like to me that's the preferable trade-off in that scenario. the false positive is the one that can, to your point, like destroy brand reputation. And to me, that's like the thing that I have to safeguard against for my customers. Otherwise, I've failed my mission.
Yeah. Do you leverage like any partnerships with the carriers, and or is there the potential for that? Because you mentioned like signature required, that would obviously be handled out by the carrier. Because like that in theory sounds, really really unique. Like, oh, there's a high risk here. Like we're sending it to you, but it now has signature required, or something to that effect.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually way more that I want to do with the carriers, and I think there's a lot of potential there. Signature verification is something like we built a proprietary tool that is nothing that you'll ever interact with as a user of our software, or anyone would. It's just our way of creating that requirement on whatever software you use to buy the label, right? So let's say you're using like Ship Hero or something, or your 3PL uses Ship Hero, right? If you installed our application, there's a part, or there's a section where you would put your API key, so that we can write those instructions to Ship Hero's API for you. And then when the label is purchased and created, it automatically has that requirement added to it, which means you buy it at the maximum discount that it's going to be offered at. And critically, that is communicated with the consumer when they receive the shipment confirmation email. They're going to see that a signature is required on the tracking page like the first day. So you align the expectation with the reality day one, as opposed to, if you had UPS or FedEx perform this kind of a service, it's going to change the customer expectation 2 to 3 days into the order process, because UPS and FedEx will have assigned this thing, many days after the label was purchased and created. Which is probably why, to be honest with you, they've never done this themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really requires
interfering with the customer experience for one of their vendors.
And that's like the soft sensitive spot for them, right? Like, just like me, like if they do something that degrades this, the overall customer experience of their customers and consumer, they're getting dumped for one of a million other carriers now, right? So for them, they have to safeguard against that just as much as I or Shopify does, or really anyone else that's sort of servicing merchants.
Where do you think this heads in 3 to 5 years? Because it's obviously becoming more and more prevalent. I've even seen like teams of people, go into neighborhoods and just like clear out every package that possibly could be there. What do you think this looks like in 3 to 5 years from a solution standpoint?
I think that there's a two-part answer to this question, right? So there's kind of two ways in which these issues present themselves. One is what we would call like the third-party way, and the other one is the first-party way. So third-party way is, I am pretending to be somebody else, right? I'm stealing a credit card. This is like the fraud that you're like probably very familiar with. Those tend to be the schemes for people who are highly organized, right? So they're going to try to hack your UPS account and redirect the shipment to somewhere where they can get it, or they're going to hack a bunch of UPS accounts for people that are buying AT&T phones or something, or Apple devices, and they're just going to follow the trucks around that have Apple devices on them. Maybe they're going to try to exploit the carriers. Those types of things. You'll see companies that are stood up that they'll troll the dark web. They'll do all sorts of creative reverse engineering of the playbook, and then they'll look for those trends and patterns. Then there is like the first party issue, which is, I am who I say I am, right? But I just happen to know I can take advantage of you, right? There was a Wall Street Journal article came out a couple of days ago that 41% of Gen Z respondents said that they thought it was acceptable to claim that they had not received an item when they actually did, right? Like, and like the numbers who said that they had like bracketed or wardrobe were over 50% each, right, amongst this survey. And so I think what you'll see in the future is tools like ours will curb that kind of behavioral abuse. Because if you know that you can do that, there's a percentage of the population that is just going to take advantage of it, right? Like, but if you know that it doesn't really work anymore, you kind of stop trying, right? So like our goal is, shape and change human behavior just via the presence of us existing, right? Like if you know that like this store doesn't instantly issue a refund to you anymore when you go to return an item, and they wait until the item has been inspected in a warehouse. Again, if you're doing something first party, your name is on it. So you're much, much less likely to like brazenly go out there and do something. And that in and of itself, I think it's sort of, you sort of spark the self-enforcing change.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could see consumers where maybe it's a final sale item or something and they don't have the avenues to do like a normal return. So instead, they'll just say, it never came, or, things like that. So I wonder how long-term this will impact, companies' policies around returns and exchanges, whether it's even worth selling through some of these items. Like, for example, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and on these websites that I never even heard of before that my girlfriend shops at, and they are final selling some stuff at like $6 for an item. What is even the point at that point? If it goes out and then they say they didn't get it, who the hell cares? I mean, you're not going to go out and try and like figure out how to recover that, etc. But maybe stores start to back away from some of these final sale items or stuff like that. Because
I agree that I think it will go there, and I'm really hoping that I can help stores avoid that, because like one of the issues that you run into is you run into brand dilution, right? So if you sell a bunch of product this is why like a Barber jacket never goes on sale, like the classic ones, right? Maybe some of their new stuff does, but like the old stuff that like Prince, whoever in England is wearing, right? That thing is what it is. You're either going to pay for it or you're not. I think, if you give into that temptation, it's very, very hard to recover that brand value. Like once you've taken that step, you've kind of taken that step permanently, because customers know that at some point in the future, there is going to be this like mega sale on this thing, and they just wait to buy them, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the entirety of the behavior around Black Friday. I did it. Like there's a million things that like I needed. It was like, I need new, workout shoes or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to buy them in September. I'm just going to wait until November and get them for 40% off, right? That's really, really bad customer behavior to like opt yourself into, because that means you're always selling at your lowest margin at one of your highest costs too, right? Because like peak season, surcharges, like it's more expensive to fulfill that thing at a much lower margin to begin with. It's great for overall top line revenues and growth and brand awareness, but outside of that, it's like it doesn't really do much for you. So I think like one of the features that we have, right, that we would tell somebody is, if you have a customer with a history of bracketing or committing returns fraud, the items to them should be final sale, right? Like it doesn't mean you should make all your items final sale, or you should make items where you're experiencing fraudulent returns fraud issues final sale. It just means that because that creates a bad experience for other people, right? For the other 98% of people who don't do this shit, right? Yeah. Like it, and that sucks. And that's the thing that's going to drive your consumer base somewhere else in the long term.
Well, I mean, that to me is much more appealing, and especially as you get more and more storefronts, I imagine you can see, Brandon is a serial did not receive his order guy.
Yeah.
You're going to the 6th store and everything for me is final sale. But for the 99% of other customers, it's not final sale.
And that's exactly what we do, right? Like that is the core functionality of what we're providing, and the way that we view the world is like, because you basically, you have like everything in life is trade-offs, right? Like, so trade-off one is you live in a world where everything becomes more draconian, right? Like, so world one, I like to use the Domino's pizza example from like the late 80s, right? So you have 30 minutes or it's free, right? World one is a bunch of teenagers exploit 30 minutes or it's free. They order pizzas while they live 32 minutes away. They get you to fulfill them. And then they call in and they get free pizzas every week. And then your drivers start speeding up and getting in more accidents. Your insurance bill goes through the roof and you kill the program. Way two is, you know who these customers are that are trying to effectively like game the system, and you don't allow them to game the system. And then 30 minutes or it's free exists for the initial reason you created it, which is you have an edge case scenario where things go wrong, because they always do in a certain small percentages of cases. And you want to make sure that you do everything you can to make it right, because you as the business who owns the customer relationship have failed that customer relationship in the consumer's eyes, right? And like, that's the thing that you need to constantly be obsessing over as a brand or as a business if you want long-term, staying power and stability in the marketplace and profitable growth, right? But if you allow the edge cases to basically nuke the program for everybody else, then you tend to, bleed the CX over time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to not shoot yourself in the foot tracking down the 1% that is a bad actor. But at the same time, I have seen some crazy things when it comes to customers trying their hand at, scheming the system in any way, shape, or form possible. And so it is.
What's the craziest example you can think of?
So we had a coffee client, and we had somebody who was sort of strategically going about placing really large orders to different addresses within like a certain area, and then immediately like the credit card disputes, a lot of credit card disputes, and then a lot of I didn't get this package. And they were doing it over time, so it wasn't like it all hit at once. Like, I forget who was auditing it, but somebody was going through it, and basically this person got like a couple $grand worth of free coffee essentially over the course of a year and a half or 2 years or something, because the systems are not that tight, unless you're using third-party solutions like yours. I mean, a Shopify, even discount abuse is easy to do. Open up incognito windows, it's not that complicated.
No.
And so, I mean, that was definitely one example. And then the craziest ones to me are always when customer signs for it and then they say they didn't, but like they definitely did. It's depending on like the area. I think in some cases, you could maybe say, oh, they did or did not get it. But I mean, if you live in like a gated community and your signature is on the FedEx thing that was given to you for a pretty high ticket item too, that's also like large, it would be pretty damn hard to move like a cold plunge tub from your house to somebody else's if you're trying to steal the thing. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Something's not working out there. So
no, I mean, you look like Wile E. Coyote trying to like carry the thing on your back, like it would be a little insane.
Exactly. Yeah. But we have seen like customers rely upon credit card disputes as a means to not have to deal with customer service, which I actually think is some brands' fault. I mean, if you go to some company websites, you're like, how do I even talk to you? And you can't. Yeah. I had furniture delivered probably like 4 months ago. Something was wrong with one thing. I went through the claims process. I went through everything. Never was able to get to an actual person. The claims link to go like track the claim 404s when I try and go to it. And so there's literally no other resolution for me other than to dispute it. Even though I technically still have the damn thing, it's broken, but I have no means of returning it or getting it repaired. And then the credit card company's like, well, why haven't you returned it? I'm like, well, because I can't. I literally have no ability to return it.
They provided me return it to where? I mean, exactly. If you can tell me that answer, I'm more than I don't want this thing in my house. Like, I'm more than happy to, to get rid of it.
I will literally light it on fire. Like, I can't even use it. So, I can see where that comes into the equation as well sometimes. But
and the other danger, I mean, if you're like a brand, right? The other danger of allowing it to come to credit card disputes is you compile a certain number of chargebacks and your processing fee moves up, or you, like, God forbid, you get like kicked off of whatever your processing network is, right? Yeah. Like, you become a high risk person, you become impossible to service, and like your business is gone. You know, obviously that's like very worst case scenario, but you know, basically having like chargebacks be the default resolution mechanism is probably not a smart idea as a strategy. I think it's probably safe to say that.
Definitely not a sound long-term business plan.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing these insights. It's definitely something we haven't touched on before and is becoming more and more of a problem. So I think there's definitely a lot of need here with merchants to, I mean, if they had some sort of a credit card, chargeback system in place, plus you're about as, buttoned up as you could be on that post-purchase, fraud side of things. But before we hop, can you let everybody know where they can like find you or connect online? And I'll include it in the show notes as well in case there's any more interest in learning more about this.
Yeah, you can find us at deliverlytics.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Bobby McKinnon. You can also find me on Twitter, Bobby McKinnon. Feel free to reach out. Love to serve any of your customers.
Awesome.
Or listeners.
Well, again, thanks for coming on. For everybody listening, as always, this is Brandon Amoroso, and you can find me at brandonamoroso.com or scaleless.ai. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.